Hello, and welcome to my channel. 4 years ago, when I started on YouTube, I did a spooky storytime series. The goal was to take some of the traumatizing and horribly nerve wracking experiences that I had had in the dating world and to retell them in a way that demonstrated how absolutely horrifying they were for me at the time. These were not cute, fun, romantic little bubbly dating stories. These were things that honestly, in retrospect, especially for how quick they all followed each other, like they really all happened within a year span, should have sent me to the psych ward. I'm not kidding. If you remember those stories, we're talking about men who were hiding drug addictions, men who were hiding criminal records, and men who were just hiding that gave me names that were not theirs. I could not believe it when it was happening to me. And so when I started my channel, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna talk about this. But I'm festive. I love holidays. I love Halloween. I love Thanksgiving. I love Christmas. And so I was like, how can I talk about it in a way that is festive? And so I did a spooky dating story time series. And in that series, I took you guys through some of the most traumatic dating experience that I had had. And some of you really, really, really liked it. Now, unfortunately for my channel, and for those of you who are newer viewers and may have missed it, those story times did not survive the great content purge of 2023. What that means is that I decided in 2023 that I needed to give my channel a facelift and I needed to be someone different online. It was a soft rebrand, didn't really work, but I also wanted to take some of the stories off my channel that I had told that I was beginning to feel a little bit of distance from, because as time passes, you start to realize you were telling them from like like you were just trying to survive and understand. And it wasn't necessarily anything that you would have shared as entertainment if you were truly healed from the situation. So while those stories still live on my Patreon, I moved them. They're on my Patreon. They'll be there forever. I didn't want to, they're already out there in the world. So, hey, I did take them off of my YouTube channel just to give myself kind of like a fresh start. Yeah, you get it. However, you all have asked me for years. Some people have asked me. I feel like a one of those influencers who are like, everybody's been asking about my lip color, which, by the way, it's just topicals. But you guys ask me. You say, hey, do you gonna do anything for Halloween? And people have asked me every year, you're gonna do another spooky storytime series? That was fun. That was really fun. And honestly, I was like, nah, I don't have no more of them stories, because I'm thinking I've got to tell you these traumatic, horrible things. And thank God that was only 1 year of my life, my 35th year. That was the absolute worst year for my romantic existence on this earth. I thought it was 22 for a long time. Then I thought it was 30. The worst year was 35. Oh my God. But I didn't have any more of those stories. I told you everything. So I was like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And then I was watching an episode of Dateline, or maybe it was just a documentary online, trying to get to the bottom of something. And I realized I might not have any more superbly traumatic stories to tell you. Thank God. But I do have a lot of unsolved mysteries in my romantic life. Like, I have things where I'm like, okay, so we had that one conversation. What happened to him? I have things where I'm like, okay, he told me he was going to go ride his bike to Tijuana. I never heard from him again. Is he alive? I have stories where I'm like, okay, he said he wanted to go on a date, but then he said his car broke down. He was giving me updates by the hour, but I never heard from him again after I said, maybe we'll reschedule. He never tried to reschedule. Was it all a lie? And I have stories like the one I'm going to tell today, where I go all the way back to my early youth, my high school years. And I talk about a situation that, if it had gone another way, might have changed the entire course of my life. I am calling this series Love Unsolved. And I'm going to be posting a video in this series every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. the month of October, and the final episode will air on Halloween night. Again, these stories are not traumatic. these stories are not like, like my first series was just again, as time moved on, I was like, oh Lord, I don't know if I want people to know all that about me. Damn. But these stories in the Love Unsolved series are just annoying and weird because the ends never got tied up. There were so many questions I still have today. And for the most part, most of the people in these stories I can't contact. I can't reach out. I can't ask him, hey, what was up with. I can't do it. And even if I could, I'm not gonna. The story I'm telling today is a story that happened back when I was in high school. And with everything that was going on with Ayesha Curry the last few weeks and people talking about meeting someone when you're young and getting married young, et cetera, to somebody who's, has a bright future and, can go all the way in athletics. I talk about a situation that happened when I was in high school where there was a guy who was a very, very talented athlete. And it seemed, by all intents and purposes, that he saw me and he thought I was attractive, even though in high school I did look like this my freshman year. However, he never made a move, and as his star continued to rise, the likelihood of him ever doing so became less and less possible. Until finally, we both graduated, went our separate ways, and we never spoke again, or even for the first time. It's a very, very weird story. I do want to say before I start this story that I make some comments in this video about the dating practices of biracial black men who have white mothers, specifically white mothers. And I say that as a black woman, what I've learned is that if a black presenting man turns out to be biracial and he has a white mother, he is not going to be interested in dating black women. And while I feel that there are exceptions to this rule, because you really never know how somebody was socialized, when I was growing up, that was the rule. We had a handful of little black boys in my school, and I grew up in a very colorist time, they let us know we're not feeling y'all, whatever. I've talked about it. And I talk about it in this video in some detail. But at the time, I noticed a pattern that a lot of the young biracial men had white mothers. And as a result, they only wanted to date white young women. Not only was it the fashion, it was what was in style, it was what was considered acceptable, but it seemed like that was who they were first attracted to. And I'm sure Freud could say something about this, but to me, it just means that you're attracted to the person who taught you how to socialize, or to the image of that, right? You're attracted to the first person who taught you what being feminine was, who first nurtured you. And unless the world gives you a different message about that woman and women who look like her, then you're going to continue to want that image of femininity around you your entire life. And I think the difference sometimes with black men in general is that they're given a lot of negative messaging around black women. We're too masculine. We're this. They see that. You look at media and you don't see maybe what your black mother looks like. You don't see her in commercials. You don't see her in TV shows. You don't see her held up as a standard of beauty. And so you as a man begin to think, oh, if I want to be a winner, then I've got to get somebody who, you look at what happened with Eartha Kitt. If you watched my video about passing, the whole idea of men being like, I want to be with the woman for what she can do for me. And I feel like that means biologically as well. And so I think sometimes, not every man, but sometimes black men who date biracially or interracially, they are looking to, I'm not going to go into all of that. But what I will say is I have noticed that when a biracial man who happens to be black, mixed black and white, has a white mother, he will date predominantly white women. And I think that's just because he loves who loved him first. And society doesn't always have the kindest and nicest things to say about black women. And I think he just sticks with what he knows. And I experienced that a lot growing up. And this situation and this story might have been one of those things, but I don't know. I'll never know for sure. But in the story, I do not explain that I understand why this happens. I don't really understand. I just kind of state that I noticed that was happening a lot when I was growing up and even as an adult. But I also want to make sure people know that I know it's not their fault. Like, I'm not, date who you want to date. Just sometimes we have to critically think about why our preferences are certain things, especially when we are very hard set on doing a certain thing. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole nother conversation. But in the video, I just kind of throw it out there. I'm like, this is what I noticed as a kid. So I just wanted to make sure you guys understood. I've thought about it a little bit more than what I say in the video. Also, something I want to say. I am telling this from the best of my recollection and my memory. And when it was happening when I was in high school, I did not really open up to my friends about it. It was one of those things, and I have a couple of these stories in my life. I'm not going to share them all with this Love Unsolved series, but I have a couple of these stories in my life where they were happening to me, and it was just me. I didn't have anybody I was comfortable opening up to about it. I didn't really tell people, but it was something that was happening. And I say that because this story kind of involves somebody who became a public figure. Of course, I don't give away the name. I've actually even blocked his name from the comments. And you might, in this life, if you happen to watch this and you went to school with me almost 30 years ago, you might say, I didn't know about that. That wasn't going on. But just because you didn't know about it doesn't mean it wasn't going on. Also, I want to say that for this story right here, I would take a lie detector. This is my memory. These are my memories. This is what I remember. And if anybody was like, oh, that didn't happen, just because you don't know about it doesn't mean it didn't happen. That's only for a few people. That's only for a few people, and I don't even know if that'll be a thing. But I just want to get that out of the way too. That I'm owning up to the fact that everybody who hears this might not remember the same thing, but I do because it happened to me. And like I say in the story, it could have changed my life if it went a different way. But it didn't. And now, without further ado, I present to you the first episode of Love Unsolved. Someone had a crush on her.
In a quiet suburban high school, a cheerleader with an unfortunate haircut, and a basketball player with a bright future. Were on the road to becoming high school sweethearts. But then their love story was cut short. What happened? Find out on this episode of Love Unsolved. Someone had a crush on her.
This story begins when I entered my freshman year of high school. My freshman year of high school is important because I was coming from a predominantly white middle school, and there was a small cluster group of black kids. It was more black children than I had gone to school with ever in my life. And I really thought when I got to the school that my social life was going to begin. I had a very best friend who was a little white girl for years in elementary. And when I got to middle school, I acted like it was 1950s Jim Crow and was basically like, well, we can't be friends anymore because now I have to go be a black girl and you're a white girl. Stop talking to her, I just thought now it's time for me to go be black. So sorry. And I felt very badly years later, but at the time I thought it was just so necessary. I needed to have black friends and I needed to find a black boyfriend as soon as possible. I needed to get that part of my life started. I think if I had been accepted by the black students, particularly the little black boys, it probably would have changed the entire trajectory of my life. I probably would have tried to go to an HBCU. I probably would have, I don't know. But I know that what ended up happening, instead of my self-esteem skyrocketing and me feeling so much better about myself as a young black girl and me feeling, like I was desirable and cute and etc., I ended up feeling, I ended up being introduced to several different complexes about my looks and who I was and what I was worth that followed me around the rest of my life. So basically, I got to this middle school and the first thing I discovered was that I was unattractive, and that the black boys were the loudest about that. They were the loudest about how unattractive I was. Sixth grade, I started off with all of this like really excited energy. I was always really excited to like embrace fashion and embrace all of those things. I remember Clueless had just come out, and so I went to the store. It was a store called 579, and I had my mom buy for me a plaid skirt. Like, I basically went to school looking like Cher Horowitz one day. Looking like Cher Horowitz. Remember in the movie, Cher had a black best friend. I'm looking like Cher Horowitz, but I can't have a white best friend. I've got to only have black friends now, but I'm dressed like this white girl from Clueless. The price of being black in suburbia. But anyway, so I remember I got made fun of for my Clueless outfit, and I never wore it again. This guy was like, "You look like you're going to Catholic school," and I'm like, "It's fashion. He doesn't get it." But I'll never wear it again. He's made fun of me. And then also around this time, my mom stopped doing my hair because in, elementary school, she's got me in the bobbles and the bows. And then as I got older, it was a lot of half up, half down, maybe braids. When I got into middle school, I was all on my own. And I can remember wrestling with my hair in the morning and pink lotion and trying to get it back in a ponytail and having these little bangs and just really struggling with my hair. And in middle school, my acne started to come in, and I can remember sixth grade at one point I had this huge pimple on my head right here, and I had this huge pimple on my head the day that my friend decided to help me ask a boy out. I'll never forget him. He's a cute little light-skinned black boy. I didn't yet know about the rule when it comes to biracial black men, which is that if their mom is white, absolutely no, you're not gonna date him. We see this a lot of times with black men who do like these dating shows, like Matt James from The Bachelor. And that's the thing about black genes. They're so dominant that somebody can have a whole white parent and look like they have two black parents. Like, it happens. With black people, phenotype is never really an indication of genetic makeup whatsoever. It's more so about, your social, how were you socialized is the question you have to ask people a lot of times, despite what they look like. He may look like any other black man in the world, but if his mama's white, he not gonna date you, girl. So I didn't know this though at the time. I just thought, whatever. And I remember my friend went and got him and brought him over to this table in the cafeteria and was like, "Okay, this is Stephanie, and Stephanie wants to know if she wants to talk to you or whatever." And he laughed in my face and ran off. And she was like, "Oh, girl, I'm so sorry." And I said, "It is fine. It is what it is." But that was one of many situations that I had when it came to little black boys in middle school specifically, where they were the loudest voice proclaiming that I was ugly and undesirable and untouchable until they discovered that I had a butt. And then it was, well, she's got an ugly face, but the whole butter face thing, right? So I always knew that about myself when it came to these little boys. And when I was getting ready to go to high school, I had endured 3 years of being told I was undesirable. I had gone through a year of gaining a ton of weight and wearing the same clothes almost every day because I was deeply depressed. Middle school was depressing as hell. That's why I went back to teach it, because I wanted to be the person that gave kids programs and buy-ins and made their experience interesting and fun, because I had had a horrible time. But when I got ready to go to high school, I was like, okay, that stuff's in the past. I'm never going back. The past is in the past. Let it go. Let it go. I was ready. And one thing that had happened was that my hair had all broken off in 8th grade from stress. And not only stress like mentally, but also stress on the hair. I would always wear it back in this like ponytail. It all broken off in the middle. So my beautician had given me this haircut. And I thought it was like a cute little bob, but I actually looked like it was definitely giving divorced mom of 3. It was definitely giving, I drive a minivan. It was definitely giving, I looked like, I don't want to wait for my life to be over. I want to know right now what casserole I will make for dinner. Like, I looked like a middle class 90s rom-com mom. And that makes sense because the woman who cut my hair was that. Okay, well, she was a black woman. The black woman version of that. So she cut my hair in this little pixie cut bob thing. And sometimes it looked okay, but most of the time It was just very outdated. It did not look like, the cool hairstyles of the time. I mean, this was time Aaliyah was still alive. This was the time of the girlies getting either wearing, braids, or they had long pressed hair, long sew-ins. And here I come with this wispy bob that's mostly just bangs. I mean, I did not even really process how out of fashion my little haircut was. All I knew was that high school was going to be a different world for me. Life was just going to open up. Everything I expected to happen in middle school was going to happen in high school. And one of my friends, we were really excited because we were going to go to a different school. We were supposed to go to the same school as our middle school, but in high school, one of my friends was like, I'm not going to that. And I was like, well, I'm zoned to a different school anyway. So we were headed to a new school. And this school that we were supposed to go to, it was just more exciting for us. We just felt like it was going to be a whole new start. We didn't really like middle school. Here we go. I get to high school and I want to say I'm overwhelmed. The little black girls are super cute. Everybody got hair. We had a senior class at the time that looked like the cast of, I don't know, they looked like they were hot. These boys were beautiful. They were beautiful and they looked grown as hell from what I can remember. And my freshman year, my high school was very, very, very good at high schooling. Like, I mean, we were good at football. We were good at we were winning all kinds of awards. Like, it was like we chose the right place. But certain things still felt so out of reach, specifically boys, especially little black boys. They made it very clear whenever they came in that they were interested in the white girls, the Latina girls. There was one girl there who was mixed. She was black and Italian. She was adorable. She was so cute. They liked her. They really liked her. And then there were girls who were just giving 5'5" with brown eyes, smile like the sunrise. I mean, they were just gorgeous girls, all the upperclassmen had girlfriends, and all of their girlfriends looked like, once again, just like supermodels, and or they were giving racially ambiguous, or they were white, or they were black women and they looked like supermodels. And so I was in this school, but I felt like, where the hell am I? I felt like I was on another level and I still couldn't really compete. The difference though was that it was in mindset. The difference was in mindset. So I did notice that there were some black boys who were like, oh, but who is she? What's her name? And that's the thing about being a young black woman is you do get so much pushback sometimes from your own race, but then the highest acceptance will come from your own race as well. So it's a really interesting experience. I remember this one guy, he was really into it. I don't know, but he always had a girlfriend. It's this very story of my life, right? They're always taken. But anyway, I was just kind of overwhelmed. I was like, okay, I don't know what these boys want. This is different than middle school where they were very clear. They only like Latino women, mixed women, and white women. And now I'm in this school. And first of all, they're finer than anything I've ever seen. Who gives a damn about those boys from middle school? These are men. And secondly, all the girls they date look like models. Why is everyone so beautiful here? And what the fuck is going on with my haircut? I was just very confused, very overwhelmed. There was also a lot of little white boys running around that were attractive. I had actually told my father to be prepared. When I go to high school, I'm going to date a white guy. That's going to be my life and what happens with me. And I remember to send that point home, I played I'll Never Break Your Heart by the Backstreet Boys for about 72 hours on a loop. To this day, if I come to my dad and I say, I'll never break your heart, he breaks out in hives. He's like, please don't send me back. Please, Stephanie, please. But I wanted him to know, I'm having me a white man, forget these little whatever. I did not know, but ninth grade was going to be the beginning of some very hard years, very disappointing years in that department. And I was really going to hate the whole experience until I found cheerleading, and cheer turned my childhood around. It turned my high school experience around, and it kept me employed, and it kept money in my pocket for the next 25 years. Cheerleading helped pay my bills until I was 36 years old. and I started doing it when I was 14. So 22 years, I was able to get a check in some way from being a cheerleader. So pretty great. But before that, freshman year, I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. I feel undesirable. I feel, on top of you're in high school now, whatever. I'm disappointed because, I'd heard about the high school parties and all this stuff, and I'm not getting invited anywhere. And again, I have this fuck ass haircut, and I'm seeing all the girls with their sew-ins or their beautiful braids, and I could get braids in any time. Let's understand that. And I didn't always wear the little bob around. I didn't always wear that. My mama kept me braided up. Let's know that. But when it was down, it was embarrassing. And I don't know. I was just kind of like, what is high school even about? And then I started noticing somebody noticing me. And I didn't know what to make of it. I'd be in the hallways and I could feel eyes on me. And it started with these girls. And I was like, who are those girls? And I would just kind of throw it off and keep going about my business and, doing what I needed to do, whether it was getting involved in theater. I think I tried to run track. I was a basketball manager. Oh, my God. But I would see and I would feel these eyes. And then I would feel the eyes of this little boy. And I'm like, what is that? And then this other little boy. And they would stand in this pack together. And it was like they were, like in a team huddle, and every once in a while somebody would stick their head up, look around, and they would look at me, and they would go back down into the huddle. And I was like, well, what are they doing? And one of the girls was a cheerleader. She was on JV. She was in 10th grade. She was a year older than me. And I was like, okay, whatever. And this is before I got into cheer, so I didn't really. But the staring and the whispering. And I recognized two of the kids because two of them went to my church. And I couldn't figure out why they just didn't speak or what was all the staring about. And then I realized that they were all staring on behalf of one boy in their little friend group that I wasn't aware of. But he seemed to have quite the infatuation with me. Quite. And I didn't really know a lot about him. I just knew he was a year older. He played basketball. And I didn't necessarily think he was cute, but I could tell that I had been spotted, and I was definitely a highlight for him in some way. And I started noticing just that I was being watched. I was being watched, whether it was the girls, whether it was the other little boy, or whether it was him directly. And sometimes I would catch his eye and he would smile, but he never approached me. He never asked me out. He never did any of that stuff. I just knew I was being watched. So I kind of just pushed him to the side. I didn't entertain him. Like I said, I didn't necessarily think he was cute. But if he had come up to me and been like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I want to talk to you. How are you? I would have been in that thing. What's up? But he never did. So freshman year ends. By this time, I have tried out for cheerleading. I've embarrassed myself in front of the entire school. And I was going full throttle into my all-star cheerleading career now. And I was like, I'll come back next year, whatever. I was a totally different person by end of freshman year because I had a purpose to live. I had a reason to live. I think that was the summer that I was a child missionary and I was an all-star cheerleader. My God, I was such a nerd. Anyway, also I went to theater camp that summer. Anyway, so freshman year ends. I come back for sophomore year and we're starting to hear rumblings now about this kid that's been watching me, and he is doing really good in basketball. He's doing really good, but I'm like, well, I ain't got nothing to do with him. He don't talk to me, so whatever. But I'm still being spotted. I'm still being watched. I'm being watched at lunch. I'm being watched from in the hallways. But he ain't gonna say nothing. He's not gonna come up to me. And so I was like, whatever. And again, I wasn't moved by him. I didn't really find him attractive. He was shorter and he was kind of lanky. And I just was like, I'm not really into it, So then we get to the end of sophomore year. The end of sophomore year, I try out for cheerleading again. And this time I make the team. I go into my junior year. And this is now his senior year. And this year, this boy is serious. He's serious. So when I came in, he was a sophomore. I didn't really know nothing about him. Junior year, my sophomore year, he was a junior. We're hearing more about him. We're hearing about his skill, how good he is at basketball. And then senior year, it was like, this is his domain. Like, what do they say? This is my house. Like, it was his house. Okay. He was that dude when it came to basketball. We had a pretty solid basketball team that year. And that was the year that he decided to turn up his surveillance of me. It wasn't just going to be a couple of laughs here and there. Now he's a senior. His balls have dropped. And I remember, it's just weird. So I'm going to tell this. I'm going to tell this little story really quickly. And then he like shifts, his behavior shifts. So because he was a senior, and I do want to say he was kind of racially ambiguous looking. I don't know what his racial makeup was. I know he was black, but I don't know if he had a white parent, Mexican parent, Latino parent. What was Mexican, Latino, Asian? He could have been half Asian. I didn't know if he came from Louisiana, but I did know he had, some waves in his hair. I didn't really know what was going on. He probably did not have a white mother because of how interested he was in me, and from what I've experienced, if they have a white mother, that's how they see themselves. And so I didn't really know, what was going on physically with him. I knew I still wasn't necessarily attracted to him. But if he had ever come correct, I would have said, okay, what's up? So one day we're at a pep rally, and it's like a pep rally at the beginning of the year or something. And I really want to tumble, but I had this fake ponytail I used to wear in the back of her head, and I called her Pam. And Pam was about to fly off. So I took my ponytail and I threw it to my Spanish teacher. She caught it. She was a good woman. And then I went and I tumbled. I did whatever I wanted to do. I had the time of my life. At the end of the pep rally, which I don't know what it was for, why we were pepping, but we were out there. He comes over to me. He looks me in the face and he grabs my hand. And I said, yeah. And then he walks away. So time goes on, and his star continues to rise in the school. And that means he has girlies that are around him. I think I heard some whisperings that he might have a girlfriend. I knew somebody that was definitely considered to be more physically attractive than me. We'll just say that. And her and I were really close, and we used to clown each other all the time and have so much fun. But she was definitely more of like the beauty standard than I was. And so it was understandable when the guys on the basketball team were like, oh, hey, you would be somebody we would date, whatever, whatever. I remember one time we got invited to hang out with them because she was connected. And so I went over to like a little house party, and he was there, and he was smoking weed, and he came up to me and he blew all this smoke in my face and then just stared at me. And I was like, what's wrong with him? So what you have here is a pattern ever since my freshman year of this man who clearly thought I was something, but never, ever spoke to me. We never had a conversation. In the 3 years we were in school together, the only thing I said was, hey, and what? That was it. I don't know what it was about me, especially when he got to be a senior, and he had all the little girls. Everybody wanted to talk to so-and-so. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. He obviously can't speak to me. He can't speak words. So I'm good. And yeah, I'm good. I don't need anything from him. I'm good. But it was just really strange. And perhaps the strangest thing he did was, instead of ever speaking to me like a person, what he did was he mobilized the black athletes. So I was a junior and he was a senior, and he mobilized them into a booty praise chorus every time I was around. And what I mean by that is I could not walk down the hallway my junior year of high school without hearing whoop, 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 whoop. Because at the time, Trina had come out with a song called Pull Over, That Ass Is Too Fat. And the chorus of the song went, whoop, whoop, pull over, that ass too fat. Whoop, whoop, pull over, that ass too fat. So I'd walk down the hallway and I would hear, whoop, 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 whoop. No matter what was going on. No matter what else, they would, it was like a call they did. Call and response. To let each other know that I was in the hallway. One time I walked past him and he stopped everybody he was talking to. He said, just look at it, man. Talking about my ass. And I didn't really know what to do with that. Because what? And then I remember, I have so many stories about that, and it started to make me feel very uncomfortable. I went off and they stopped, as far as I knew. But he never, ever spoke to me. Ever. Never asked me out. Never did anything directly. Just stared, grabbed my hand, and pulled together the Praise Booty chorus. Years passed by. He graduates. He goes to college. I graduate. I go to college. He actually played for some time in the NBA. And I looked him up a couple years ago, and he got married to a white woman. So I'm guessing maybe I don't know. Maybe he just met her. I don't know. A lot of the young men that we went to school with, I want to say all of the black men that we went to school with married white women. All of them. Which is interesting because a lot of the black girls that I went to high school with were still not married, in their late 30s. Last time that I checked. So around 36, 37, 38, a lot of them were still not married. But all of the young black men we went to school with got married early and got married to white women. And this man was no different. I don't know what that girl did that made him actually decide to open his mouth and talk to her for real. But I assume they're still married to this day. I looked him up and I was able to find him on Wikipedia. So apparently he did really well in his basketball career. And I always wonder what life would have been like if he did actually say, hey, my name is so-and-so. And he actually did try and apply a little bit of pressure. Would I have been the cheerleader with the basketball boyfriend? Would I have had a high school boyfriend? Instead of feeling ugly and unwanted and occasionally having a huge pimple show up in random parts of my face, would I have had a boyfriend? And how would that have affected my journey as a person? Because I know a big part of why I felt so free to try so many things. I did so many things, you guys, when I was in high school. I saw a picture of me. I mean, I was a basketball manager freshman year. I had forgotten that I did that. I ran track. I tried out for volleyball. I spent a semester in softball class. I did theater. I did the morning announcements. I have to tell you all my story about the morning announcements. Oh my God. I ended up hiding in a cardboard box underneath my teacher's desk for half a day. I, of course, did cheerleading, and dastardly so. I embarrassed myself when I tried out. I threw my weave into the audience. I did some amazing things on the floor, but I felt completely free to be me because I didn't have to worry about how my shadow was going to affect someone else's identity, or how my behavior was going to affect someone else's identity. I feel like when you're in a couple, it's like, ain't that your girl? Ain't that your girl? And there's something that happens to young girls when they start dating. It's all of a sudden, it's all about that boy. It's all about, their hair, and everything's got to be perfect. And they change when they start dating, when they start having sex very early, especially, they change. And also at that time, I was super, wait till you get married to have sex. Would we have gotten married? What would have happened? Anyway, none of those things happened. I explored myself fully. I was myself fully. And of course I did have little crushes and etc. Never had a crush on him. I was not attracted to him. But I was aware of him. I was aware that he was there. I was aware that he was watching. And I think he speaks for a lot of the duality of my life in a way. I can't truly say, "Oh, I'm not a beautiful woman," or nobody's ever had a crush on me, or I never had anything, because I have these stories from my life where I will have this shy little weirdo who's like watching me. And in his case, he stuck his whole family. It was like, watch her, watch her. Oh, that's the girl he likes. Oh, that's the girl he likes. Okay, have him say something. Damn, all these homecoming dances I'm going to by myself. Can he please say something? And you may say, well, Stephanie, why didn't you ever speak up? At that time, I don't know. I just felt like I didn't know what was wrong with him. I didn't know what was going on. Um, I don't know. I guess I could have said, maybe if I was nice, I don't know. Was I mean to him? I don't know, y'all. It was 25 years ago. But I will say this. When I looked him up, if he had been single, I would have messaged him. If he had been single, because he was out of the league by then. He was older, obviously. And if he had been single, I would have said, I have a question for you. And I would have messaged him for sure. And then I don't know. You guys may not have ever heard of me. I may have been living off of NBA pension money. I don't know. Um, I was reminded of this the other day because it's just one of those stories that floats in the back of my mind. And it's just, I say now, like, I don't expect mutual attraction. I don't expect people to see me. I don't expect whatever. But I think it's just because it hasn't been consistent in my life, right? Because then I have stories like this. And I have one or two stories like this from middle school too. All of that. Oh, she's so dark skinned. Oh, she's got that big old forehead, which, hey, it is what it is. Oh, she's got those big lips. Is she African? Oh, yeah. Oh, the way I was made fun of because people thought I was African. But in the midst of all of that, I would also have, oh, hey, that guy likes her. Or hey, he's looking at her. Oh, hey, did you hear? Oh, wait. And it was always so weird. It was like, what am I? What do I mean? Who am I? What's going on? What's happening? But yeah, this girl right here that you're looking at with this fuck ass haircut, somebody had a crush on her. The question will always be though, why he ain't do nothing about it? And that, I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to share that story really quickly, and now I have. As always, thank you for watching.